Sarva Mangala Mangalye Shive Sarvartha Sadake Sharanye Trayambake Devi Narayani Namostute. So the Navratri time is a good time to practice regularly the chantings of mantras. And ideally, it's a good time to increase it, whatever numbers you have been given, to increase that. Sometimes we say 108 times or even more, if you are able to do that. Okay. Okay, so some basic introduction about the mantra. What is the power of chanting mantra? So see, the first reason why are we chanting mantra? So when we chant mantra, it involves our speech and also it involves our mind, two aspects. See, there are three kinds of actions we can engage in. Kaya, Vachika, Manasika. Physical, mental, and speech-related action. So the Kaya physical actions are actions that we do a lot of times based on what thought has triggered it. See, like when you do any action, it is usually the physical action. It is triggered by a thought. Like I want to go from here to maybe Ganga, I want to walk until here. So first I have to have a thought. And the thought triggers my action, physical action. Similarly, also with the speech. But what happens when we come to speech is more potent. Speech can also trigger back a mental action. Like I tell you, go and bring that to me. So my speech triggered you towards a physical action. And the speech can also trigger you towards a mental action. So speech is very powerful, much more powerful when we come to spiritual life than the physical actions we do. That is why in our shastras we take shabda as pramana, meaning shabda is verbal. Verbal thing is a source of right knowledge. So shabda is very powerful. And this the rishis of India knew very well. They harnessed this power of words, this power of speech. So initially, as we all know, the Vedas, was given out as only through speech. People used to remember all the Vedas as speech, only as words. And then later on, these words became like what is called as written down, in actual scripts and given out as scriptures. So coming to this thing, what is this? What are we doing with mantra? The first introduction is, see, the mantra is about exercising our choice. What we call as our free will, our choice. So when we repeatedly exercise our choice, what are we changing is our samskaras, our habitual patterns. Our thought patterns, our habitual patterns, it is constantly caught up, by our previous actions, impressions in our mind. Not just this life, in previous lives. So these impressions drive our actions, especially the physical actions. They are driven by our samskaras. So how do we change these samskaras? So what happens when we learn shastras, scriptures and all that, the wisdom, just an intention, wisdom and understanding takes a little longer to translate into physical action for us. So I first have to, this is what I say, right? Like when I want to do a physical action, I have to have first a mental thought about it. And this unconsciously or consciously is what we call a sankalpa. A sankalpa is that I intend to do something. And this intention can be conscious or unconscious. So a spiritual, a Vedic or a yogic sankalpa is that I first make a conscious intention. Most of my life is driven by unconscious impressions that I have, and that creates an intention. So first step is to create a conscious intention. I will practice this mantra. First. Second, why will I practice this mantra? And there are steps related to creating a sankalpa, and here I will not be able to share that. So there is a specific way how you go about creating a sankalpa, especially when we talk about the yogic and Vedic sankalpas. Okay. So that is the second point. So you have to have a clear sankalpa on why you're practicing this and what is that you want to achieve, and also how you can invoke the higher forces to help that. So these are the steps. Okay. Now what happens is, why are you doing this again? You're doing it because we are exercising our choice. And as I mentioned, the verbal action is a means to connect our mental action with physical action. So if I tell somebody, go bring me that cup. So my verbal action there has now created a mental impression in his mind, and which is followed up with a certain physical action. So this is the power of how we use the mantras, the words. Okay. Now in Indian scriptures or in Indian spiritual teachings, there are many mantras. There are several kinds of mantras. So first I will mention that. See, there are mantras that are what we call as, like this Gayatri mantra. Then there is, in even Gayatri mantras, there are different Gayatri's mantra. There is like Rudra Gayatri, Narayana Gayatri, Durga Gayatri. Then there are what is also called for certain spiritual practices called as Bija mantras. And these are again for certain specific purposes. And then there are what we use as stotrams for chanting. And this you will hear in temples everywhere, there are different. And then there are also things people do as parayanas, different things such as Bhagavad Gita, the shlokas and all that. They're done as parayana. And maybe in Advaita Vedanta, the Bhashya also of Shankaracharya, sometimes they're done as parayana, and the Upanishad mantras. So these are different things for different results. Now the Japa mantra has a very specific purpose. The Japa mantra is actually done for manifesting your conscious and guru guided sankalpa. So there are different things also. Sometimes we do japas. Like if we are going through some different difficulties in our life, then there are general japas also people do. Such as if you're going through fears or death, the most common mantra is a Mahamrutyunjaya mantra that can be done as japa. So there it is not necessarily for manifesting your sankalpa or your spiritual path. It is, of course, it will help, but it is more specific that to help you overcome that specific problem or situation that you're going through. So those anybody can do. Now, there are specific mantras that you receive through the Guru Paramparas or mantras that you feel some inclination towards. There are like your Ishta Devata mantras. So if you don't have an initiation mantra, then you can take up an inclination, that which your Ishta, based on your Ishta, meaning the deity that you love or you like or you connect most with, and you can take a mantra related to that. But in most traditions, when you come on the spiritual path, you get what is called as an initiation mantra, and that is, say, much more spiritually potent. Now, another more specific purpose of mantra is based on its definition. Mantras, the Sanskrit definition is mananat trayate iti mantra. So mananat, that what is our unconscious thought patterns that are consciously driving us. And this creates its own manifestation of our life for us. Our life, is a manifestation of our thoughts. And to overcome this unconscious, habitual creating of our world, we are the co-creator of our destiny in that sense, And this is done unconsciously based on all our impressions and our environment and what we are inclined towards. So this is a barrier in our spiritual path. It doesn't allow us to progress. And this is also the cause of what we say samsara, the repeated cycles of life, why we keep getting stuck in that, why we are not able to awaken to our true potential, why we are not able to realize our divine nature. So this is the reason why we are stuck in that cycle of samsara. So the manana trayate, to transcend that, to overcome that, to cross that kind of a habitual patterns is the use of mantra. Mananat trayate iti mantra. Mananat. So here, how do we go about doing it? There is a few steps. Then we will do a small guided practice. The first few steps is japa mantras are not generally chanted loudly. So you can occasionally chant a little bit, few times loudly, but sometimes, like you see people playing their mantras on loudly in temples, and that is okay, just for the purpose of people's remembrance. Chanting is going on, but if you are doing japa yourself, you can whisper that mantra if you like. You can whisper it, or you do mentally. Sometimes what happens, people, when they're doing mentally, they are not able to keep the mind on the mantra. So then whispering is helpful. That whispering will at least awaken you to remind you more consciously that this is what you're doing, so that mind doesn't get digressed away. Sometimes people who are more prone to meditation, who are more inclined towards meditation, they can bring in moments of silence in between the mantras. After you do 12 or 48 times, you can bring in these moments of silence. And when you're there, you can feel the change of energy in the body and the change of your mental state. You can connect to that. So you can enjoy that subtle peace, that subtle joy that comes with the chanting of mantra, rather than just mechanically chanting this. And also you can use those periods to visualize the deity, or the feel that divine is actually merging into you, or you are merging into that divine, either way. So these are different kind of personality types. They have to adapt the mantra accordingly. How they kind of stay with it. Now, important thing is, it is not just we have to get out of that thing. It is just a word, or it is just a technique. Because really, if you get the mantra properly, or if you're drawn that much deeply towards it, then that mantra has life. It has like an energy of its own. And that is why one of the reason we say this is that form of Shakti. This is in practice in Upasana. This is not just understanding, listening. This is practice. You have to practice it. And what is that practice doing? Along with that practice, it will awaken for you that wisdom, especially that wisdom that you get with that Guru Parampara. So many times in our life, we are emotionally caught up, or we are physically weak. Then we are not able to recollect all that we have studied. our mind is not at that state where it can bring that wisdom to help us in our life. That situation of our life captures us, it hijacks us, our physically also, we may be so weak. And then what happens, that mantra awakens in us that wisdom that came to you through that parampara, through all the sages, through that was given to you. So this is why that mantra has that power. So one is understanding it, and then the importance is using it rightly, how you use it. Okay, so these are the reasons why we do it, and also some of the steps how we do it. And again, you should try to remind yourself, and if possible, listen to this recording. So, okay, now coming to this, the initial thing is there's a formal practice. The formal practice you do, and you will be guided, and you, based on how you are guided, you should do that formal practice according to that. Then there is an informal practice during your day. Every now and then you can do it. So these japa mantras are not like Vedic mantras that you have to be like you have to do it only certain times, like sunrise, sunset. Of course, it helps on that also. But there is also other things related to Vedic mantras that you have to have your bath and to sit in a certain posture and all that. But japa mantras you can chant anytime, anywhere. It is supposed to help you anyway, right? So ideally, formal chanting of japa mantras, you should follow some steps, how you go about doing it. But more or less, the japa mantras are informal. Okay. Then the other thing is that it is, you have to start with some steps, which I will guide you now. So we will go through a bit of guided practice. The important thing is also, you at the end of the thing, you try to bring to your mind the people in your life who you also want to benefit by your work, what you're doing. Of course, if you are a spiritual sadhak, and if you are also a sannyasi like me, then we do it for the world, everybody. But sometimes it helps to be very specific. If you want to pray for somebody, if you want to, then what happens is that what you have generated will also help them spiritually. Because these are words, remember, and these words have power. They are creating energy, and they can also help people who are going through difficult time in their life, or people for whom you wish something positive. So all this has to be done before you start chanting and getting into the mantra. So if these things are all there, then your whole practice will go step by step easily. If these things are not there, then like you're just going by feeling and emotion, and those things will not have that much effect for you. And this is why people don't practice the mantras. They give up after a while, because all these things are not properly prepared, or at least understood. Okay, so let us now start. We will do about 15 minutes of guided practice in the mantra. And for this practice, the mantra that we will do is a very generic mantra, and it is also a mantra that is used to invoke that form of Nirguna, Nirakara, Lord into Saguna, Sakara. So the mantra which is used very commonly, and it was received as an initiation by one of the sage, very secretly given out to one of the sage. And he decided the world has to benefit from this. And so he gave it to the world. And he broke that thing. He said, even if I go to hell, others should benefit from that. Okay, so this is that mantra that is very popularly known as Om Namo Narayanaya. So this mantra is generally can be used by anybody, and so we will use it here. Om Namo Narayanaya. Okay, all right. So let us start with that. So the first is we will say a short prayer, and the prayer is that we are surrendering to the divine. We are invoking the presence of the divine, what is called as Ishvara Pranidhana, being in the presence of the divine, the higher force, the higher energy to help us. So in order to do that, we will say a Shanti mantra. And you can mentally or wherever you are, you can join me with that. Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we start with, let us bring our mind to that transcendental and that immanent Lord, that may we be blessed and maybe discover our true potential. Then now we remind ourselves of the sankalpa, whatever spiritual intention you have, and you invoke the presence of the divine to help you with that intention. Okay, now we will start the chanting of the mantra, and we can do this. I will actually tell you, like, to stop at every 12 times. Om Narayanaya. Om Namo 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 Narayanaya. So just try to feel that inner silence and feel that energy in the body or the mind. And you can also visualize the deity, whatever deity that you connect to. And now one more round we will do. And again, as you do this, make sure that you keep bringing your mind again and again to the mantra. Om Namo Narayanaya. 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 Again, bring to your mind that deity or that God, and also your sankalpa. Feel that mind resting in that inner state, in that presence of the divine. Okay, so one more round. We will do now 24 completely. Om Namo Narayanaya. 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 Om Namo Narayanaaya. 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 Just allow your mind to rest in that divine presence. Now you can offer the potential of this. You can send a prayer of well being to your family, friends, and to the world in general. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.